Okay, so today we are going to be installing a GT Thunder idle air valve onto a 2014 through 2022 YFZ450. This model specifically is a 2017. Before we start the video here, you need to know why. And why these are actually, I'm surprised not everybody runs them. So if you have this year of machine, I believe this, even if I'm not sure if the 10s through 13s have a setup like this, but if they do, this is probably going to be a pretty similar task, because I know those are also fuel injected. Now obviously the 9s and previous years are all carbureted. Now the reason why I'm doing this, which I think, again, every racer, sport quad racer should, is to get maximum performance, you need to have good air and you need to have good fuel, which is your air to fuel ratio. I have the Vortex on this unit and I've been playing with that Vortex, but that only controls your maps and it only controls your fuel. It actually doesn't play with your air at all. Now, it's just a fuel injected machine, obviously, so technically they don't have idle adjustments. What they have are air adjustments. As you're letting more air in, the idle goes down, and as you're choking off the air or you're letting less air in, the idle goes up. If you think of it like a carburetor, essentially, when you pull the choke out on a cold morning to help the bike fire up, you're choking the motor of air to get a little bit more fuel in to help the spark. Then the bike gets warm, you push the choke back in, now you're getting a proper amount of air to your fuel, everything is good to go. Essentially what this is, right here, is a hand adjustable choke, but it also, if you twist the knobs clockwise or counterclockwise, allows more air to come in and less air to come in depending on which direction you go. And I will get to that a little bit later in the video. Now, as I mentioned a second ago, I can already adjust the air on this unit, or excuse me, the fuel on this unit. What I can't do is just the air, which is that little guy right there. Now, I'm sure there is a way to adjust it, but it's not easy. It's not as simple as what all standard track motocross bikes have these days, which is a different colored version of this. I know on my my Honda 450, it is literally a Honda OEM version of this, even has the yellow pull tab, just like this unit's going to get here in a minute. So basically what I'm giving this machine is a manual air adjustment. It even says on the bag, and just pretend to put quotes around the word air, but it is an idle air valve. With more air, you're going to have a lower idle. With less air, you're going to have a little bit higher idle, but then, and only then, can you really dial in your Vortex without having a fancy dyno or some sort of computer. This machine, as it sits right now, has a pretty low idle, and it also runs really rich, which means it's getting a lot more fuel than air. Hence why I'm doing this. I'm surprised, honestly, that sport quads, especially the Yamahas, considering they're the only ones that make sport quads these days, I'm surprised they just don't come with something like this. Highly recommend, especially if you're racing in environments like myself up here in Washington State, where sometimes it's 30 degrees and other times it's 100, depending on the year, you're going to need to play with this. I don't know if you necessarily have to use the choke feature of this, but, you know, 2 clicks either way will make a big old difference. So getting into this project here, as we isolate back on this area, you're going to need to undo this plug, and there's a rubber boot that comes over this plug. So you're going to push the boot back. You can do that by hand. The clip for this plug is on the other side, and it kind of looks like that. This side, I should say the outer side, the part that my finger's actually touching, is solid, but the clip for it's on the other side. So I actually had to put a screwdriver in from the other side and play with it for a little bit. But I did hear it unclick and I was able to wiggle it off. So we will slide that all the way off. I just put it on a little bit again for the start of the video, and because I could not do that one-handed. Then what you'll need to do is, you can see 3 Phillips heads bolts. Pretty simple task. You don't need to take any sort of plastics off to get to them. I have my seat off. Again, I was messing with my vortex. So I'm gonna go grab a Phillips head screwdriver and pop those caps off. Alrighty, so I've got my 3 screws off here. As you can see, once you take your 3 screws off, you're able to just pull that cap off. What that looks like when you pull it off is this. My O-ring came out a little bit when I did it, not a big deal. If you were to ask me, oh, there goes the O-ring. If you were to ask me how to adjust this thing, not having any knowledge of the Yamahas, I would tell you you're not really able to at all, because this is a pretty fixed unit, and this is where all of your air adjusting would be, including the O-ring that just fell out. You will need none of it. The only thing you will need from all of this is those 3 screws that you just took out. Now, I've already opened the bag, and I'm going to hold my phone over the instructions here, so feel free to pause the video over the instruction sheet. Feel free to pause the video over the instruction sheet if you want to here. That pause was for you to pause the video and read it if you want to. But it's pretty self-explanatory. So now what you'll do, this one already has an O-ring in it, as you can see, is take the GT Thunder here and assemble it into the quad. There's no direction. You know, it's not like, oh, the holes go up or the holes go down or anything like that. It's nothing like that. There's only, you know, it's going to go in any way you want it to go in. It's just fine. So find your hole here on my camera and slide it in to place, just like so. Then what you're going to do is you take your, it's hard to do one-handed, so it's going to sit something like that. Then what you'll do is you'll take your little gasket that I just set down right there, slide it back over your knob, and thread your Phillips bolt back in. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So as you can see here, I have got my GT Thunder threaded in. I've got all 3 bolts lined up where they need to go. That little gasket was directional. The GT unit itself is not, but the gasket for the threads are. I believe it kind of just oblonged. These 2 sides are shorter and the longer side goes out here. Pretty simple. Again, the GT itself is not directional. What you're going to do with this plug is slide your boot back over so you got a nice clean look. Zoom out a little bit here. And then I'm just going to take it and zip tie it up out of the way. I'm going to zip tie it to my throttle position sensor. But first, I'm going to go off of what the sheet has said, because this is my first time playing with one of these, is thread it all the way in. Until it doesn't go in anymore. And I also have the choke pressed in. So theoretically right now it should be getting no air. I have completely closed off any sort of air that it needs. Now the sheet says to go out 6 or 7 clicks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's what it says. I don't know if that's, it just says that's a start point. So I'm not quite sure how many clicks this thing has. A click itself is very noticeable. You can feel it. You can damn near hear it. Choke is just pulling out, and again you'll hear it snap out. It'll stay out until you press it back in. So I'm going to get this unit started and see where the idle's at, adjust the air, see where the idle is at by adjusting the air. I have a feeling right now it's probably getting little to no air because I haven't came out that much. But yeah, I'm going to fire up the machine right now, and we will see in the next clip if I end up adjusting this thing anymore. Alright, so I've got the quad fired up here. I will say, if you have one, plug in your kill tether. I was sitting here for like 5 minutes wondering why it wouldn't start. It did fire up at the 6th click. now the process is just undo my battery charger, because again, I had the kill tether off, which is why it wouldn't start, and I was sitting here scratching my head. Again, I'm going to take a zip tie and just do something like that. Just zip tie around the throttle position sensor here. Try not to sneeze. But that's all it is. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple. It's going to really help you dial in your air settings, which is something that you can't do on these quads, at least very easy. And it's manual. Anyone can figure it out. Very easy install. Very happy with the install. I ended up backing it out. What was it? 8 more clicks, 7 more clicks. I put it at 13. So 13 clicks out from all the way in. Your quad might be a little bit different. Not every quad's the same. Altitudes, coldness, weather, whatever. But mine's at 13 right now, and I'm happy with it. In addition to idle, which is what that air valve is an idle screw by letting air in and out, like we've already talked about. With that air, you're also going to be running lean or rich. Think of the fuel injection. It's a lot more like a carburetor than you think. It's just, it forces the fuel through versus naturally falling in from the tank. So in this quad's case, the idle was really low. Not horrible, it idled, but it was low. And in doing so, it wasn't quite perfect on your air to fuel mixture. It was getting too much fuel. It was dumping smoke out the back for what the original air setting was at on the thing. Now that we're able to adjust the air levels, I've been able to very quickly give it more air to match how much fuel it's getting. For this quad's case, it does have a DASA exhaust on it, but for riding down at my private track, I have it corked. When I take that cork out, I guarantee I'm going to have to play with that idle screw a little bit more, or the air screw, in or out a little bit, because now it's going to breathe a lot better. But yes, so in addition to idle, you're also helping, you know, your mixture hit right on point where you want these things. If you're familiar with your with carburetors at all, which I've mastered over my years on dirt bikes, you want it to run. If you're sitting at idle, you want the knob to be just like a carburetor. You want it to sit right before it starts idling up. So, you know, if you're flatlining at an idle, right before that curve up, you want it to sit right there. Any lower than that, you're getting less air than you need. Any part where it's starting to go up, you're getting more air than you need. With this, worst case scenario, even if I go race it down in Mammoth or something, or, you know, somewhere south, I'll have to adjust the idle screw maybe out a click or two, and that's just to give it more air or less air. It's pretty simple now that I have the GT Thunder installed. A long story short, that little tiny little yellow knob, being able to manually control the air, is going to make a huge difference. So nevertheless, that's the video. That's how you install it. That's the pros and cons of doing it, the hows and whys. Quad's running great. Turn it back on one more time. There we go. Had to use 2 hands for that. And this is how it'll sound. Choke is not out, so choke is in. So no choke, no throttle. That's where I like it. Idle's dropping just as it should. Super happy. Super happy with it. Super happy with how the machine or the motor's sounding. I would give it a solid thumbs up.